Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello, it's a little cooler today, so we shouldn't have any background. Well, I haven't made any background noises. There's nothing going on in the background. But if you hear some zhishing noises, that's just, I don't know, me probably dropping things. So this week, what I thought to talk and explain a little bit to you was a question that was asked with the Astrological Association. So somebody had asked that they wanted something, because we were asking them, what would you like at the next conference? And somebody put that they'd like more traditional astrology, or they wanted traditional astrology. So I thought, whatever is traditional astrology, and that sent me right over the edge, because let's start at the beginning. So I know what this person was asking for, because there is a school of traditional astrology based in the UK. But I just want to go dig deeper, which I think is the expression, with what is the word traditional. Now, the word tradition is opinion or belief or custom handed down from one generation to another, especially orally. This process of handing down artistic or literary principle based on usage or experience. And the word traditional, which is what was used here, based on or obtained by tradition. Now, when we're considering what type of astrology do you want to learn, or even what is it that people practice, or even what is flipping astrology, we have to take into account where it started and where it is now. Now, there's no dispute that when you check the history of astrology, and you can do that in fabulous books like The Dawn of Astrology and The History of Western Astrology, both of which that are by Nicholas Campion. I've got another fabulous book, which actually I don't know if it's in print anymore, and it's called Astrology from Ancient Babylon to the Present by a guy called P.G. Maxwell Stewart. I have talked about him before, but I'm just answering the question about what would be classified as traditional, and I'm coming back with the argument, well, what do you classify traditional as being? Because there's no way of practicing today something that is very ancient, like Babylonian astrology, because we're not in Babylonia, which doesn't exist anymore, by the way, which obviously you knew. But we don't live lives today like people might have lived their lives back then. And with astrology having a more than 2,000 year history, over the years, various different little branches of it have gone here and they've gone there, and people have had these ideas, and it's generally some bloke somewhere that's had another idea and everybody follows that idea, etc. So how far back are we saying, inverted commas, that you need to go to consider what is traditional astrology? As I say, I know what this person was asking for. I'm well aware of that, but I want to talk about, what do we consider something traditional as being? Obviously, something isn't traditional that happened last week. It won't even be traditional if it's 100 years old. Well, actually might be, but it probably isn't going to be something. It can't be considered traditional unless there's going to be, because it says it's handed down from one generation to another. So let's say your average lifespan back in the day, I think it was something like 30, but just double it, make it a bit bigger, say it's 50. So you're going to have 2 generations, that's 100 years. So that's your parents, and that can be something that was handed down from you, like the way you cook or the way you do this or the way you do that. People talk about tradition. And something very similar, again, the only reason I'm talking about this because it reminded me of something very similar when I was studying homeopathy. I just thought I was studying homeopathy. I just rocked up at some school I like the sound of, and I like the teachers, and I like what they're doing, and it was geographically doable for me to get there. I didn't know that there were different types of homeopathy that you could learn, that there was traditional, and there was this and ancient and blah blah and all of that. And the trouble with anything that you learn, what happens in the end is people get into arguments about what something is or isn't, and whether or not it's right or not right. And it gets very similar to the way that arguments that people have in religion. What is God, and does Christ exist, and who's the Buddha, and blah, 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 blah. And it can get quite tedious. So I thought what I'd do is on astro.com, they've got a lovely set of pages called AstroWiki, and on there someone has written the pages. Actually, it never tells us who the authors of the pages is, I don't think. Is it in the discussion page? No, I know there's a guy that does do a lot of the pages, because we had a chat online once before, and I swear he's a Capricorn, but I could be wrong. But anyway, astro.com, and if we talk about tradition now, is one of the older online resources for astrology, complete with computer programs that allow you to do stuff for free and create charts. And it's one of the earlier websites. So I'd say astro.com is very traditional. But anyway, on the AstroWiki, so this is on a page called Traditional Astrology. Traditional astrology is a catchphrase for the main types of Western astrology practiced prior to the mid-19th century. It includes the Hellenistic astrology of the Greeks and Romans, Arabian, medieval and Renaissance Europe systems of astrology. It's sometimes known as classical astrology, which does not imply restriction to a classical period of Western history or culture. Traditional astrology nearly died out in the 1800s and was largely replaced by Western, inverted commas, modern astrology, and then brackets, revised astrology, we'll come into those in a minute, methods by the turn of the 20th century. Traditional astrology is gaining in popularity today, however, as a combination of different historical techniques in the hands of its practitioners. The early 20th century modern astrologers hoped to revive astrology, but they disliked traditional astrology's seeming negative view of human nature and people's negligible prospects for improving their lives. Moreover, becoming a temple robber, shipwreck victim, or owner of runaway slaves were apparent problems in the past, but have limited relevance for modern urban society. The pioneers of modern astrology essentially streamlined traditional astrology by ignoring many of its techniques and instead interpreted planets, signs, aspects and houses through the teachings of psychology or human potential movements. Astrology witnessed a strong revival in the 1970s, including in the hands of practitioners who based their interpretations more on common sense understandings of human character than allegiance to particular schools of thought. Now it continues. By the 1990s, now that's when I got into astrology, some astrologers became dissatisfied with what they saw as modern astrology's dismissal of astrology's historical foundations, its apparent lack of structure, and its overly optimistic view of human perfectibility. Others hoped to retrieve old astrological texts from obscurity by translating them into English. Horary astrology, which had little place in psychological interpretations of personality, gained a new following. Today, traditionalist and modern astrologers still wage major debates over which branch is best. However, many traditionalists today use modern tools, such as the outer planets, and interpret human character and events in ways that are decidedly orientated towards modern cultural values, while some modern astrologers apply traditional Western and Hindu methods in their work. So I think that's a really good explanation of what traditional astrology is. It isn't one thing, because it's saying there it's got Hellenistic astrology, Greeks, Romans, Arabian, medieval and Renaissance Europe systems of astrology. Is quite a bunch of stuff. Now on there's a thing called modern astrology, so I could sort of say I was under that banner, because I don't do the decans and I don't use whole sign, and I'd say I'm more sort of modern astrology. So again, modern astrology is a catchphrase for several types of astrology practiced in Western countries since the turn of the 20th century, after traditional astrology nearly died out in the West by the mid-19th century. Several, inverted commas, new astrologers hoped to revitalise astrology, but to do so using the insights of science, psychology, human potential movements, and essentially by speaking to the conditions of modern urban life. They also began to popularise astrology through newspaper columns and primers that displayed some remarkable departures with the past. One of the major features of modern astrology is its focus on the personality of the individual. Although traditional astrologers wrote about people's temperament and the quality of their soul, modern astrologers examine character in terms of motivation, behaviours, emotions and interpersonal relationships. A major branch of modern astrology, psychological astrology, which when we were speaking last week to Leho, that is what he practices, and he's also doing Jungian, uses the insights of the discipline of psychology to interpret humans as unique individuals. A key difference with traditional astrology is that modern astrologers streamlined many methods of traditional astrology. For example, a traditional astrologer might occupy himself with a variety of minute observations and calculations to assess the relative strength or weakness of a planet in a horoscope. A modern astrologer would more likely simply to delineate planets in signs, houses and aspects. Some planetary configurations might seem more difficult for the individual to manifest constructively than others, but each planet is seen as contributing in a more equal way to the whole. Having largely discarded traditional astrology's determination of planets' essential dignitaries, many modern astrologers look at more recently developed potentials in the horoscope, such as midpoints, asteroids and minor aspects. I do a bit of midpoints. I don't do asteroids, and I don't do, there's only one minor aspect that I would consider, which is the inconjunct, because then you'll be able to make a god. Most modern astrologers use the outer planets Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. You are not going to get me to do a chart without them in there. Abso-flupping-lutely, because it's part of our solar system, to interpret horoscopes, whereas many traditional astrologers today stick with the original 7 naked eye planets. Most modern astrologers use the modern rulers of Aquarius, Uranus, Pisces, Neptune, Scorpio, Pluto, although some would examine those signs' traditional rulers as well, Saturn, Jupiter and Mars respectively. Yes, I do that. Many modern astrologers include natural houses and their planetary rulers. This system relies on the correspondence between the first sign, Aries, and the first house, the second sign, Taurus, and the second house, and so on. Consequently, because Mars rules Aries, it becomes the natural ruler of the first house. Venus, the ruler of Taurus, becomes the natural ruler of the second house, and so on. Traditional astrologers hold that some planets are stronger in some houses than others, but do not use these affinities. A major difference between modern and traditional astrology concerns the degree to which its adherents believe that most people have considerable opportunities and choices in their lives, whether astrology presupposes a more fatalistic view of the influence of the heavens on the outcomes of people's lives. Although fatalists and free will advocates appear in both camps, in general, modern astrology developed as a reaction against the more deterministic pronouncements of traditional astrology. Some modern astrologers fuse their work with beliefs in various metaphysical schools and Indian astrology, or in contrast, an interest in the stock market. Therefore, there is no single unified, inverted commas, modern astrology, but rather a range of practices and expertise. Modern astrology shares with traditional astrology concern with the mundane and material circumstances of people's lives, their health and their future. And once again, I think that's a very nice summary of the difference between traditional and inverted commas modern. And because astro.com is a Swiss website, I want to just read to you what I was talking about in brackets, a thing called revised astrology. So this is what I'm talking about. Certain people will get into their heads something that they want to do things differently, which is cool. They do their own thing. So revised astrology. In Germany, the term revised astrology, reviderte Astrologie, has been introduced and extensively used by some astrologers of the 20th century for their particular revision of classical astrology. This article refers to their use of the term. So two people, Thomas Ring and Herbert Freyer von Klöckl, wrote important works which contribute to the further development of astrology in the 20th century. Ring challenged the idea that there could be a mechanical explanation for the influence of celestial bodies. He also rejected rigid rules of interpretation in any kind of determinism or event predictions. Furthermore, he spoke of the limitations of astrology and did not believe that a horoscope was capable of showing an individual's time of death, which I don't think it can either, but anyway, his sex, level of maturity or intelligence. And again, I would really struggle to say whether or not somebody was or wasn't intelligent from their chart. How would you even determine that? I've probably talked before about my sister who had Down syndrome. You wouldn't know she had Down syndrome if you look at her chart. It'd be daft. Anyway, revised astrology has influenced many branches of modern astrology, in particular psychological astrology. Ring had a different approach to aspects than classical astrology too. He rejected judgmental interpretations and classified aspects as either analytical instead of difficult or synthetic instead of good. He developed his own characteristic terminology to describe the signs of the zodiac and planets. The same term is used for the signs in the same element. Fire, for example, is described as volitional, earth as material, air as mental, and water as emotional. The following list shows the properties of the signs as the energy that. So it's a whole list there. So things like Capricorn materially moves, Mercury is intelligence, and so on. So there was a little, and you'll get these little side sort of skips to anything that's come from a long time ago. It isn't linear. And in my understanding, astrology has become whatever it needs to become. So whenever you're practicing it, or whatever way you want it to be, it will be that way for you and your contemporaries. There definitely are people that go off and will do their own thing, and we've talked about a few of them as well. So Michael Gauquelin, I cannot pronounce his name, and he did a thing called the Mars effect and did loads of research, and he was a psychologist, I'm sure that's what it was, and he was also an astrologer, and he did both things, and he fell out with the astrologers and he fell out with the psychologist as well. I think, and he killed himself in the end. But yeah, don't do that, please. Don't fall out with people and then get suicidal about whatever it is you've done research, and it's not worth the tragedy. Now, the other thing that people call themselves is medieval astrologers, and we've had those on the podcast. So we've had the wonderful Chris Mitchell, who wrote Superbook, England's first astrology book. So a guy called Roger of Hereford's Judicial Astrology. And he writes in there, and there's some, if you want to know about house calculations and using a astrolabe, he's got that in chapter, I don't know, it's on page 130. So he practices what he calls medieval astrology, which would come under the banner of traditional astrology, because you're going to have all your decans. And the reason I don't practice that is because I don't have enough brain cells to do it. What was I doing the other day? Oh my goodness, yeah, I was listening to an audio book about ethics and climate change. And the guy that wrote the book is, now what's the word? Yes, the guy that wrote the book is a guy called Travis Reeder, Rieder. I'm sure it's pronounced Reeder. And he's a bioethicist and moral philosopher. So he got into the philosophy bit of it in there. And there was one bit when he was talking about, I can't even remember what it was, but it was my brain cells had gone ping. And there's a limit to what I can grasp in my little Mercury retrograde in the sign of Pisces brain. But it just thought, I didn't even bother going back and listening to it again. I would have lost the plot. I got the general gist of what he was talking about. So the point I'm making, I'm not going to be practicing that type of astrology. So if you decide to learn with me, we're not going to go down those. We're not going to go down those bunny rabbit holes. When you learn with me, you learn all of the basics, and then you can swim off wherever it is you want to go afterwards. We're going to just do the building blocks of astrology and what is or isn't in there and what you do or don't need to know to be able to help someone. Now, I perfectly understand people wanting to learn something in much more depth. Totally get that. From my perspective, the astrology that I practice is to help people. And I know I don't need to have that finer detail of astrological calculations to be able to do that. It's not even about calculations, but that's a personal journey that people can make. And going full circle, if you've got very, very limited understanding of astrology, trust me, you can still help people, because the biggest part of helping someone is understanding A, their sign of the zodiac, B, their moon sign, and C, their ascendant, if you do or don't know it. I mean, if it's ascendant, it makes life a lot easier. And people feeling as if they're understood is in and of itself extremely beneficial. Okay, so today we're talking about traditional astrology. There is medieval astrology. There is Hellenistic astrology. From my perspective, no one of those is better than the other. And I refuse to get into arguments with people, and I haven't got into arguments with people, I would refuse to, about which method that is used is any better than anything else. Don't get me into the houses thing. Because again, house system, whatever you choose to use will be the one that works for you. And if it works for you, it's going to work for your clients as well, because you'll attract to you the clients. And this is a fact, that when you set up your private practice, you'll attract the clients that can use your skills. And equally, you will also, and it happens quite a bit, you'll attract clients that will challenge you in some way about whatever your beliefs or your methods or whatever it is that you use. If you're no good at what you do, your clients will constantly challenge you. If you've got a nice, happy practice, then everybody's happy. But yeah, so having astrological knowledge, and whether or not you do or don't practice traditional isn't a good or a bad thing. But traditional is a very, very broad, and I know when this person was asking about it, I was thinking, crikey, I'm sure we've got at least 20 of the people that are going to be at the conference this year that would come under the banner of traditional. Anybody that's going to be talking about decans and degrees of things, and the Lord of this, that's another one they use a lot. Well, not all of them, but numbers of them will use things like the Lord of this and the dignitary of that, and and all of those come up a lot in Ori Astrology. Those are covered, trust me, at the conference we cover those things. Now, last week I briefly mentioned about the 2 magazines that are free. So one is from the London School of Astrology, the other is from the Astrological Association. So those are still free, so make sure that you are subscribing to them, or you've clicked on them, and you can go and get them. Let me give you the details of them once more. So the web address for the AA, so of their magazine, so our magazine, is called Stellar. So it's Astrological Association, all one word, .com/Stellar, STELLAR. Bing, you can get it free. Now the other one is called the Mountain Astrologer, and the London School of Astrology have adopted it, and so you can find that on mountainastrologer.com. Nice and easy. Bing. And with both of them, you will have to give an email address. You'll need an email address from you to be able to send you the flipping thing and to allow you to have it, because it's free, as in it's not going to cost you any money, but there needs to be a two-way street here that they can contact you about it and let you know when the next editions are coming out. So don't freak out when it's asking you for an email address. And lastly, you need to consider, what are you using, or what do you want to use astrology for? Do you want it for your own personal development, so you learn about yourself and why you are the way you are and why certain things haven't happened to you? Or do you want to be able to help other people with the astrology that you are learning or have learned? Now, doing it for personal development is one thing. Helping others is a totally different ball game. And there's a lot of nervousness of beginner astrologers to actually doing readings for other people. They seem to think they need to have mammoth amounts of qualifications. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to start reading for other people and getting feedback. Don't go crazy charging stupid amounts of money when you first start out. Keep your prices as low as possible. Do some exchanges so that you then get feedback from other people. If they fall asleep while you're talking to them, you know you're not doing your job, unless you're doing hypnotherapy with them, of course. And we also have to consider, why is astrology, why does it even exist? What do most people expect from an astrology session? And as I will say, and I've said it more than once, when a client comes, they don't want you to just be talking about astrology. Even if they're studying astrology, they don't want the whole consultation to be about this and that and the other that's astrological. They want it personalised to them. So they need to know definitely about marriage and children and babies and jobs and money and all of the things you've got all those houses for, which are answers to life, universe and everything, and my spiritual purpose and why am I here. There could be anything that would be a question for somebody when they come to see an astrologer. It's not just a simple, inverted commas, mundane aspects that they want to learn about. They might want to go further into things, why did this happen at this particular moment in time, or why don't I get along with that person? And astrology will always, trust me, be able to give you an answer, or at least some variety of answer for it. So I consider astrology super for helping us find out quite a lot of things in our life. And even during a Mercury retrograde, which we are at the moment, you can still be able to help someone, because you'll know that the Mercury retrograde only lasts 3 weeks and then poof, it'll stop. So I personally think astrology is a very useful tool in the toolbox of being able to help other people. But if you don't want to help others, then please don't become an astrologer. Become an astrology tutor or practice astrology, but don't work one-on-one with people if you don't like people. I have unfortunately come across a number of astrologers that really don't like the general public and moan about them. It's like, please don't work with the general public. I love the general public, don't get me wrong. And just one last thing I want to tell you before I go. if you don't know already. I am also trained in homeopathy, and on the 31st of December this year, I am not taking on any new clients. So my homeopathy practice is going to cease. If you're already a homeopathy client or have received remedies from me in the past, I won't be prescribing them at the end of this year. So next year, when we get into the year 2026, I've already removed everything from my website. I've just got the follow-up link that's on there, but everything to do with homeopathy will just be stored on a section of my website that is just readable but not clickable or anything. So I won't be a practitioner of homeopathy at the end of this year. I still will be practicing hypnotherapy. It is much easier to do hypnotherapy either in person or online. But homeopathy, I won't be practicing that anymore. So that's one of my little tools that I won't be using anymore. So I do direct you to, if you want to know about homeopathy, I have written a book on it, and it's available on Amazon. And you can find it by Googling A Little at a Time, Homeopathy for You and Those You Love. And it's on Amazon, it's everywhere. It's not an audio book. The publisher didn't think an audio book could work, and I'd have to pay my publisher. I'd have to pay them. Can you believe that? I'd have to pay them for it to be turned into an audio book. If I'd self-publish, that wouldn't be the case. But anyway, it's A Little at a Time, Homeopathy for You and Those You Love, and it explains all about homeopathy and how to practice a little bit at home, and also what happens if you go on a consultation. Anyway, end of this year. I'm not repeating. I'm just saying it in this episode today. Just so you know, I won't be practicing homeopathy anymore, but I still will be practicing hypnotherapy, still will be doing past life sessions with people. And those are things that I've got all the equipment and audio and all of that for. It doesn't matter if you have it face-to-face or you can have it online. All those things work. That's nothing to do with astrology. It's just for, I know there are people listening that also come for homeopathy. So I hope you have a fab week, and I'll be back next week. Do send me in your chart if you'd like me to discuss it on a future episode, or if you have any questions or queries about astrology or astrologers, absolutely send me an email, mary@maryenglish.co.uk. Bye-bye now.